Welcome back to the Remedial Film Class Podcast. I'm your host, Dan.
And I'm Travis.
And I am, as always, George.
Hi, George.
Hey guys, could I propose that we take a holiday together to London? I know a real great place, about 45 minutes north of London, deep in the woods, homey, relaxing. You might get murdered. How does that sound?
You could propose it, but I am not having sex with you.
No.
Oh, well.
Or, yeah.
I mean, guys, what's the point of all the travel if
If it doesn't pay off.
Anyway.
If I have to sleep with Owen Wilson or his old mother, I'm going to have an issue. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, guys.
We watched Whirlpool.
We watched Whirlpool from 1970. We've been talking about this movie on and off for 2.5, nearly 3 years now. It is very underseen. Some would argue justifiably.
I would argue that.
This is a movie directed by Jose Ramon Larraz. It's his first movie. He went on to do other movies that you haven't seen, but you probably should.
Ra's al Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul, yes.
Ra's al Ghul.
As with a couple of the movies we've done on the show, because it is underseen, if you want the pure experience, go watch this movie. It's on Prime Video. It's on Arrow's streaming service. Go watch the movie, and then we will spoil
chomping
it
at the bit.
as
go
we
watch
go.
it now.
But this movie is full of boobs, and it is depraved in many ways. And it is, I'm going to argue, a relative of both Friday the 13th and another series of films from the United States a couple of years later. And it doesn't get enough credit as the progenitor of those movies. So if you're a big Jason fan, or if you like other movies from that era, stick with us. We might make a compelling argument that you need to go see this movie. I think it is justifiable. I think it's freaking awesome. This movie is deep and dark and evil, full of malice and despair, and the whole world looks like late November in this movie the whole time. It's wonderful. So it fits in right here on our show. So stick with us. Let's see if I can convince you to go watch it, because I don't know that these two guys liked it on their first watch.
2 watches.
You know us too well, Dan.
I know. Was it better than Wild Things, though?
Yeah.
I mean, it actually has quite a bit in common with Wild Things, but we'll get into that
It
later.
does. It does.
That's funny. No Kevin Bacon, though.
It had a lot to do with Showgirls, too.
I was
it
actually
felt a lot like Showgirls.
I thought the same thing. I thought
it was full of nudity and not sexy at all.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. There's all these boobs that I don't care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it fits in the show. Hey guys, if nothing else, this is the time to discuss Whirlpool by Jose Ramon Larraz. Let's get into it a little bit. Now, this movie is maybe provocative on purpose, maybe full of despair.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of menace. I feel like a majority of this movie is like not very interesting things happening, but in a menacing way to where you can't feel comfortable like slacking off and not paying attention, because at any moment
slacking off.
I did.
Okay.
You know,
Just
whatever
making sure.
else you might be doing during this movie, you might not feel
That
comfortable
wasn't happening.
fully committing to it. Because things are happening that are either mundane or sexy on the face of it. But then because of the ambiance and atmosphere of this movie, everything feels like menacing and off-putting, and you can't really get comfortable with, fully committing to any kind of offing at all, which is awesome. Soundtrack here was Silvio Cipriani, which if you watch Italian Giallos or movies from that era, he did a lot of the good music from those movies, so you'll be with a familiar soundtrack guiding you through this insane little web that they're building north of London.
Did you notice, George, if he talks fast enough, we won't inject anything.
Yeah, I just keep it moving so you guys don't ruin my mood.
He's like, keep it moving.
When he said slacking off, and you were like, slacking off? And I was like, dude, if you're jacking off to this, you have a problem. Go seek help.
Seek help, yes.
Seek help.
So that might be the best selling point for people that are like on the fence about even bothering to watch this movie is George says it's impossible to check off to. That's the
Prove me
challenge for
wrong.
this week.
with 2 stars next to it with the quotes. I'm putting that on our thumbnail for YouTube.
Change my mind.
Impossible to jack off to.
1 star.
1 star.
Could not get it up.
One half angry pickle. 1 downward eggplant. Oh shit.
1 star. Would not recommend.
What's funny is are we allowed to inject or? Are we
Yeah,
allowed
no,
to say
please
inject?
jump in.
Can we say inject? Okay.
Sure.
I had a strange feeling watching this movie because it felt. I'm 47.
Mm-hmm.
When did this come out? 70.
1970.
70. Okay. So growing up in the 80s, we had a channel here in the Philly area called Prism. Prism was like cable, like HBO, but local. So you get your Flyers, your Sixers games on there, but you got your sexy movies, your late night movies or whatever.
That's a one-stop
did-
shop if ever I've heard of
Yeah.
one.
So you
It's-
could watch the
It's paid for television,
it's
so
pay-
it's
it's cable.
the stuff that you want to see.
right. So you're
Yeah.
gonna watch the Flyers win or lose, watch Dr. J dunk some balls,
Uh-huh.
and then watch like Emmanuel or something whatever at night when you weren't really allowed to watch boob movies, and you're like, oh, but Prism's where to go or Cinemax
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So this movie reminded me of those kind of movies that I would sneak to watch when I was in my early teens.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would call them Skinemax movies,
Mm-hmm.
but on Prism there were a lot of foreign movies. It was like Emmanuel and stuff like that, where it was like voiceover dubbed, whatever. Terrible acting, terrible situation, but every 5 minutes someone was naked.
Yep.
And
They do that thing where where the actors act the movie and then someone else or maybe the same actors record the audio
right.
and they try to lay it over top
Right.
and it's just not right the entire time.
Which was fine. I didn't have a problem with the voiceover dub like I normally do. All that
Really?
stuff, it didn't bother me. What bothered me was, I guess, because Showgirls was kind of fresh in my mind, and it had that same thing that we talked about with Showgirls, where it was trying to be sexy, but there was nothing sexy about it. Like the kisses were uncomfortable, the incest stuff was weird. The women, like the one woman,
I'm making a face because I don't remember any incest stuff.
I really
Well,
want. I want to know how
they weren't really related, but I think in the beginning of the story, you were supposed to think that Owen Wilson was related to the older lady.
I want to know how they could have successfully done the incest thing for Travis's approval.
Huh? How do you successfully do that?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, no, I'm not into that.
They didn't get the incest just right.
They didn't
you
get
know?
it right. No, what I'm saying is you're not supposed to find that sexy. But they weren't related. But I think I might have missed it. But I thought in the beginning you were supposed to think that he was his aunt, she was his aunt or
No,
something.
he called her aunt, but she said that she adopted him. He
so
was
not
like
blood related.
He was like a loner. She took him in, basically.
Okay, so Owen Wilson is into his quote unquote aunt. Okay,
Not really, because
Okay.
they established that they're not
Dutch
related.
boy Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Wait, before you continue, can I just say that this reminds me of an episode of Community where they're talking about so the whole point is like Abed hasn't seen all of the movies. Or no, actually it's like a Game of Thrones like kind of show. And the one character, Britta, has read the books.
the water pitcher.
Yes,
Okay.
like that. That's her
Okay,
name.
gotcha.
And she's read the books, and Abed hasn't because he just watches TV. And she tries to spoil it for him.
Okay.
Anyway, who's the guy that had the late night show? He's like Oliver is his name.
John Oliver.
John Oliver.
John Oliver.
Friend of the show. I met
Friend
him.
of the show, John Oliver.
Right.
He's like, when they mention the name of it, which I forget the name of it, he's like, "Oh, I love that show. They get the incest just right.
Right.
It's so good."
So
Yeah.
that's how. So
But
see,
anyways.
again, this movie's ahead of its time. It's not only a progenitor of Friday the 13th, but it also would have fit better in a post Game of Thrones world. So
Yeah. No, it's very Esterhaus. It seemed like if Joe Esterhaus or Paul Verhoeven made a movie with their Super 8 films, like Spielberg style, when they were young teenagers, this would have been the movie they made. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Hey, I got a follow-up from Marcel, my buddy that lives in Amsterdam. And he said we hit the nail on the head that basically Showgirls was Paul Verhoeven kind of making fun of Hollywood movies and doing so in a way that he could still get away with making movies here. So we were right. He is a good filmmaker, and he knew the whole time he was making a trash movie.
He was making a turd.
I believe it.
But I wouldn't say that Whirlpool is bad on purpose, and I wouldn't even say that Whirlpool is bad. But if you are looking for alone time personal material, this may not be the place.
No,
was
to
not. Go. And if it is the place to go,
reminiscent of those kind of movies.
What's going on between those ears? You know what I mean?
Like, there was another movie. I think it was like Cinderella. They did like it was like in the 78 time period. It was just those kind of movies where they take a Cinderella story, but it's a softcore. And you're watching it. It's like, it's just not sexy. And just because they're naked doesn't make me want to watch this. Like, that's how I felt when I was watching this. I was like, okay, there's a penthouse model in this movie that I'm supposed to be into, but she's just not sexy. The older lady I'm supposed to be into, and she was, so I wasn't finding that angle of the movie appealing. So then I tried to follow the killer aspect of the movie and the photographer and the giallo-esque, Friday 13th kind of feel.
Yeah.
And I it was interesting. Had a little bit of Norman Bates going, a little bit of Jason. It was okay. Kind of like there's been movies in the 80s that had the same stuff in this movie. So I was getting it, but it just never won me over. So I watched it twice, and I felt a little better about it the second time, but it's definitely not a movie that I will own and or watch multiple times.
No, I'll never watch it again. But no, it's
no Coming to America.
Oh my God. It's I mean, I witnessed it, and it's, and here I am. I'm different than I was before because I've watched this movie now. There's a whole, hour and some change minutes worth of content in my brain that wasn't there before. So, that's a thing.
Right.
As far as, I don't see the value in it.
Oh, but you will.
Way, to put it nicely.
But you will.
They reference Shakespeare. There's a Julius Caesar moment in this movie where they talk about the triumvirate.
It's actually a prototype of the Caligula story. If you wanted to stick with it to the end, yeah.
The Caligula, yeah, that's true. And the bedrooms, some of the scenes in the bedroom were definitely a triumvirate.
Yes,
right. So
very true.
So, but like it's
a word we learned last year, and now I use it a lot.
It's so funny that like we can say things like that, but then also say this movie was unsexy.
Completely.
It was
and I wanted to debate.
Hi, this is Dan in Post. Listeners, I want you to pay attention to the fact that there's disappointment from George and Travis that this movie presented sex and wasn't sexy. They have this privileged stance that if there is sex in a movie, it must be also titillating to them. And beyond that, it almost enrages them, or at least it gets under their skin that there is sex present and it's not titillating to them. It's a really interesting thing to watch, and we're working hard to break them of that habit, but, well, just listen where they go from here.
But I was just like, yeah, I'm not, the lead woman was repulsive to me.
She was supposed to be, I think.
You think?
Because she's the most malicious.
Okay.
I think. But also, I don't know who she is in real life, IRL.
I'm sure she's been
but she's old, and she gets naked.
Yeah, but
that is I think, pretty brave.
Yeah, no, she looked fine. She didn't look her age body-wise. Her face looked older than her body, definitely. I think.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to comment on her body.
Okay.
This way or that way. All I'm saying is you don't see a woman of that age nude in
Right.
films ever.
Helen Mirren in this movie would have been awesome.
When it happens in modern Hollywood, it's a big deal, and it's celebrated, and there's like
Yeah.
Oscar buzz
No,
and stuff.
Was it Diane Keaton did it in that Nicholson movie recently? She did Full Frontal.
There you go.
And she was like in her late 60s, early 70s.
There you go. So this is what year was this movie, Dan?
1970.
1970. So I have to give her that. Like
Kudos.
it's the same kind of credit that I have to give to. There's a gentleman in our local that likes mannequins. No, he likes
okay.
mannequins.
Okay.
Right. He has a wife. We joke that he has a wife, but his side chick is a mannequin.
Okay.
Oh, geez.
But
Shout out to that guy.
Listen. This guy, as weird as he is, or this or that, he owns
That mannequin?
He owns
No.
it. He owns who he
Yeah.
is. He's like, this is me. Make fun of me. Don't make fun of me. I don't care. I like mannequins.
Okay.
And that's brave.
What if he does care, and if you do
That
make
is
fun of
brave.
him, you end up a mannequin?
Yeah. It's like a Tales from the
that's
Crypt
true.
episode.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've never actually worked with a guy. If I did work with a guy, I think I probably would have a pretty good time with him because I have a good time with everybody. But isn't that brave to be like, listen,
Sure.
I'm into mannequins. I'm not hiding it.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
There you go. We are going to have to watch Tourist Trap, though.
I buy dolls. I get it.
There you go. Travis is into mannequins.
My friends say it all the time. They joke about, oh, you and your dolls. It's
He
like, no,
loves-
they're action figures.
he
they call
loves-
them dolls.
He loves dolls.
Yeah, that's
it's fine.
It's fine.
So, anyways, I equate it to that kind of thing. Like, this is me.
Putting
Here I
yourself out
am.
there. Right.
Boom.
Boom.
Total confidence. Total, whatever.
No, I don't even think it was the maliciousness because Sharon Stone's character in Basic Instinct.
Oh, she's no Sharon Stone.
She's no Sharon Stone, but it's the same maliciousness.
Yes,
but she
yes.
comes off sexy, even when you know
Who,
she's the
Sharon
killer.
Stone does?
Yeah,
Yeah.
even
Absolutely.
you know she's a shitty piece of garbage.
This is
you
different.
still
though.
find her sexy.
Don't
This
please.
movie,
I actually
sexy.
still like Sharon Stone's character. Please do not
don't ruin it.
pollute Sharon Stone with this.
I just snorted. Great.
So
It's good for radio.
yeah. Let's just keep Sharon Stone's name out your motherfucking
Keep
mouth.
Sharon
okay?
Stone's name out your fucking mouth.
So good.
I still like that movie. So
Well, let's get into the
Yeah.
weeds a little bit. Listeners, if you aren't convinced by now that you need to at least watch this movie once, what the fuck? Watch this movie.
Yeah.
It's
probably
controversial.
cheap to rent.
Yeah.
You can do a free trial on the Arrow thing and watch it.
It sent us into turmoil.
I mean,
so you should at least watch it.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, I'm drinking. I don't even drink, and I'm drinking. From
yeah,
this
somehow
movie.
we pushed Travis to drink. It was bound to happen
Yeah.
with one of these, and Jose, you did it.
I mean, it's a fruity beer, but I'm still drinking. The hell?
This episode brought to you by Juicy Bomb.
the
Juicy
Juice Bomb.
The IPA.
It's actually Juice Bomb Northeastern IPA by Sloop Brewing.
Sloop. And it's got some Illuminati pyramid shit on the front, too.
And listen, the
Nice.
beer is so good that I don't even care that I'm not getting paid for this ad.
Sloop-a-doobie, like
yeah,
Scooby Dooby.
we're supported by Dogfish, but we're going to plug this beer. Fuck it.
I wish I was supported by Dogfish.
Dude, we have like
these guys are
nine
so cool.
breweries in our area. We should get some sponsorship.
Yeah, start making
Damn it.
phone calls. We'll put them on the show.
Shit.
Yeah, it is kind of very well known that I drink while we're
Absolutely.
recording.
This
so
episode brought
like-
to you, and then you do the, you open it. Boom.
Dude,
You could
that's
even,
brilliant.
You could start rating the movies by how many beers you had to drink to talk about them after.
That's true.
Now, Whirlpool, 1970, Jose Larraz.
Must
We're trying to get sponsorships, Dan.
Must we go back to talking about Whirlpool?
We do have
At
to
least
talk
let's
about
get the
Whirlpool.
company that makes Whirlpool tubs or something.
Oh yes,
man.
Whirlpool. I love their dryers.
They
They're
do make
dryers.
dryers. That is
Their
true.
dishwashers are fantastic.
I need a washer. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Hey,
Whirlpool.
George,
All right.
let me take you back to 2020. Pandemic's
Yep.
raging. We're in our basements recording the
Mhm.
show, getting ready to release it.
Yep.
Yes.
And I made you watch clips from a movie called A Bay of Blood. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, yes. Yep.
So if I were to send you a screenshot from the first Friday the 13th, or
Mhm.
a Bay of Blood.
I might not be able to tell the difference.
You may not be able to distinguish them. And I would argue that if I
Yep.
sent you certain screenshots from Whirlpool, it would be in the same mix of like, I don't know which movie this is from, Dan. Stop sending me pictures.
Between which two movies?
Any of the
Whirlpool
three.
And
Any of the three.
Whirlpool,
Bay of Blood, Friday the 13th. Any of that, like,
Okay.
out by the water stuff, in the woods stuff, all of it's autumn, all of it's dark, all of it's dreary. Given that you haven't watched any of those movies in a while, except for Whirlpool, a year from now, you wouldn't necessarily be able to distinguish one screenshot from another because they all kind of exist in a very similar milieu of autumn dreariness.
I don't
Okay.
even think you would be able to differentiate Sleepaway Camp from Friday 13th.
Well, he needs
Yes,
to get
I
on
would.
that.
Yes, I would.
I mean, there is. Well, anyway,
I
Sleepaway
don't-
Camp.
Listen, I don't hate Sleepaway Camp.
It's
I know,
wonderful.
It's beautiful.
This movie
Beautiful.
also wonderful, but in a different way. And not the weird thing about Whirlpool that I will tell you is most people are going to find it an unenjoyable journey. But that doesn't make it a bad watch. It's just a different attitude. Like, it's not going to have the funniness of a Sleepaway Camp, the rompiness of a Sleepaway Camp. But it's an interesting watch, and I dare say creepy in a good way might be how I would go for it. Like, yeah, it's not sexy, but it's like the escalation of the sexual stuff in this movie makes it creepier than if it was just people at a bar acting the same way in public with their clothes on.
I was a little creeped out when John Cena attacked that woman in the woods.
Dun, dun,
John
dun,
Cena with a wig
dun.
on. The
Dun,
one
dun,
guy
dun,
looked
dun.
just like John Cena with a wig on.
Which one?
The burly guy that kept raping the women in the woods. Spoiler alert.
Dude, there's like 3 rape scenes in this movie.
Yeah, a lot.
Dude, I don't know how I got through it, honestly.
I was trying to watch it with all kids awake in my living room. I paused it
Why?
like 9 times because I had to watch it.
This
I
movie
was
is
coming over-
difficult to pause. Like, there's not really toward the middle. There
No.
are no good times to pause this movie if people are
None.
coming in the room.
None. If I'd
It's-
have known Spag was going to fall asleep, I wouldn't have tried to watch it with my kids home. I would have waited till midnight. But yeah, it was tough because I didn't know what was coming up next. No pun intended. And like Jen walked in the room twice, and she's like, "What are you watching?" And it's like,
Basically a porno.
"Yeah, it's a porn.
but
Go away."
But I don't
But
want to
I-
watch it.
I'm not into it. It's a porn, and I hate it.
You were a victim just as much as the women in this movie, having
I
watched
did. I
this
felt-
movie.
There's a picture of me in my kitchen screaming at a cameraman, hanging on the wall. Yeah.
So here's the thing,
And then
guys.
it says "the end" next to it.
It's a porno, but I don't want to watch it.
They're making me watch it in a van down by the river.
It's very meta in that way.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Here's the thing.
Anyway.
This movie comes out in 1970, right?
I was 5.
When we're talking about like what movies look like in 1970, they don't look like this yet. But 1973, 74, 78, they do look like this by that time. This is like
When you
cutting
say
edge.
like this,
I mean,
what do
like,
you mean?
at some point we'll have to, I don't know when we're ever going to fit it in to the episode schedule, but this movie predicts where they're going to go with a movie called Last House on the Left.
It
Predicts?
predicts
It's a
a lot of
post-dick,
things.
yo.
Have you ever heard
Sorry.
of a movie called The Last House on the Left?
I have.
Yes.
Yes, I have.
Now, I will give you a quick review of how I came to know that movie as a kid at Blockbuster. The place that won't carry like adult movies because it's could corrupt your children, but they'll carry Last House on the Left. Yikes. The summary on the back of that box was like, these 2 girls go to a concert, and along the way they get kidnapped. And then their parents get revenge, and the revenge is gory, and they're going to get revenge, and the parents get revenge, and it's so much revenge you can't believe it. But then it turns out the runtime of the movie is like literally an hour and 10 minutes of them being abused in the
Real.
woods by these
Yeah.
rapist people, and then like 5 minutes of revenge tacked on at the end.
Mm.
Ew.
The classy version of a movie is A Clockwork Orange. Like, if you want to watch a classy version of Last House on the Left, Clockwork Orange.
I have seen A Clockwork Orange. I enjoy that movie,
Yes.
but somehow I don't think it's the same.
No, there's that.
Those are
there's a lot of
different movies.
uncomfortableness in that movie. They're definitely different movies, but I mean, like that home invasion in that movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that
is
for
what
sure.
Last House on the Left is the whole time.
Oh my god,
Well,
I don't know if I could watch that.
And that's the thing, because this Whirlpool is before A Clockwork Orange. Whirlpool is
Right.
before Last House on the Left. Last House on the Left is the movie that was produced by Sean Cunningham and directed by Wes Craven.
Mm-hmm.
Guys that go on to make Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. So we're at this point. This movie fits in an interesting transitional period where you go from movies that are starting to push the boundary. Like, there are now adult movies that are playing in regular theaters and art house theaters in the late 60s that have nudity and some sex, but very, very limited. There are movies that are starting to get bloodier and more violent, but you don't have this nexus of like all the worst horrible elements until later in the 70s in the US. But this little underseen gem kind of bridges that gap in a lot of ways and doesn't get any credit for it because most people haven't seen it.
Right.
Now, Last House on the Left is a remake, essentially, of a movie from 1960 called The Virgin Spring, which is directed by Ingmar Bergman. Now, Ingmar Bergman, one of my favorite European directors.
Friend of the show.
Actual
Yes.
classy movie. Like, actual classy director. The kind of guy who, you know, is an actual, like, film school guy that you would study and be expected to know his work. Along with a Fritz Lang, you're going to have an Ingmar Bergman.
Mm-hmm.
But what they do by the time Whirlpool comes out is they're taking those ideas and just making them into like exploitation in a way that we hadn't seen yet, but we're going to see repeatedly in the 70s. In a lot of ways, Whirlpool indicates the beginning of the 70s, the same way that Psycho indicates the beginning of the 60s. But Psycho is a world-famous movie, and nobody's seen Whirlpool. And that's weird.
In your face sexual content becomes very prominent, but it's always been sexy. This was the first time where I don't even think they wanted it to be sexy.
No, it wasn't supposed to be
in
sexy.
this movie. Yeah.
It's a good bait and switch, pun intended, to get people into the audience with a trailer that looks like it'll be titillating, right? You could have naked ladies on the lobby cards. Been a while since we talked about lobby cards, but
That's true.
on a lobby card you'd see 4 boobs and a dude and be like, hey, this movie seems
That's a movie I just watched.
like a
We're
movie
watching
I
that
wanna
next
watch.
week. 4 boobs and a dude.
But then you get into the movie, and it really is just, I mean, from the first frame of this movie, it is morose, and it is dark, and he's just, pulling a boot out of the swamp, and you're just like, what? This is not the movie I signed up for.
Yo, from the first scene, just watching him row around the lake in his boat, and the music and everything that was happening, the credits are rolling, and I'm like, I'm going to hate this fucking movie.
Well, and see, that is an interesting point, because when you watch the beginning of this movie, you have a choice to make as an audience. And your choice is either, this is really slow, I'm choosing to be bored, or why are they making this so slow? I'm going to pay more attention. And if you make the wrong choice at the beginning, it can be trouble.
I don't think it was because it was slow. I think it was just because the feel, it was like, this is
gonna be corny.
This is foreign. This is not Hollywood.
It's British.
This
it's not super foreign.
I mean, it's not Hollywood.
It's not Hollywood.
There's one thing. Listen, I shit. I shit on Hollywood all the time. Like, I'm not a huge fan of Hollywood, right? But the thing about Hollywood is they make damn good movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They make they
Psycho.
make movies the right way.
Think about Psycho. When I was watching this movie, I was thinking of Psycho a lot. And I was thinking, okay, Psycho takes the time in the beginning to establish certain things that you're going to need later, as does this movie. It establishes a shit ton of things just with that boat ride, that rowing around.
Mm-hmm.
You're learning about this character without him talking. Shout out to Owen Wilson's first movie. You're learning a lot about him, and then they cut to the the female couples, the Alka-Seltzer scene, and
Yep.
then you kind of learn a little bit about them. But you're, like you said, I'm already on watch.
Yeah.
By that point, I'm like, okay, these two are repulsive. He was repulsive, purposely done probably. But I'm not sure I want to go on this journey. So therefore, I'm not checking out yet. But I want to see.
Well, listen, it's obviously not the worst movie I've ever seen, because there was a movie that I turned it off.
Right.
Multiple times.
Let's just
Multiple
let's
times.
just put
it took
that
a
out
week
there.
to get you to watch that.
There
movie.
was a movie that I got 3/4 of the way through, and I said, nope, no more.
You
I'm not
avoided
doing any more of
way
this.
too much from that movie.
This might
Okay.
need to be the tagline for this movie on our YouTube. Might need to be, "It's better than Wild Things!" Exclamation
So-
point from George.
And also, I think I made the right decision, Travis, because I turned Wild Things off before you saw Kevin Bacon
Partial angry
come out of
pickle.
the shower.
Right. Yes.
So I think by turning it off, I made the correct decision. You were still waiting to see Neve Campbell's tits, but I was like, I don't even care.
You don't even
This
care.
movie's
Right.
garbage, and I turned it off. And then we recorded a podcast about how I turned it off.
Yes.
So Whirlpool is not that bad.
Right.
So
I put it up there with
that's my endorsement.
Westworld. When I was watching Westworld, I never really bought into the time period of it, the feel of it.
Uh-huh.
I didn't like how it was done, but I appreciated the story because it was Michael Crichton. I knew what he was trying to say.
You know what's funny? Like, I don't remember what my opinion of Westworld was at the
Right.
time, but I kind of have a nostalgia for it now.
Right.
I don't think I liked it when I first watched
No,
it.
you didn't. Not at all.
You didn't.
I didn't like it at all.
No.
But every time we talk about Westworld, now I'm like, oh yeah, that was the thing that got us to
Right.
Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Well, and he had all those
And so it's-
things in his face. All the
Yeah.
components that were through hole and not surface
Right.
mount.
Yes. All the,
I
all
just
the
think of all my
electronics
issues I
components.
had with that movie, and
Yeah.
I was supposed to like it because it's a classic and it's like cinematic history, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. But the issues I had with that movie are the same issues I had with this movie. I know I'm supposed to like it. I know it's a bridging movie that takes me to other movies that I do like, but I just wasn't buying into the filmmakers' vision and what they were showing me.
Yeah.
So then I was kind of checked out. But I did finish it, and I did watch it twice, amazingly.
That's saying something.
First time I obviously watched it a little quicker because I didn't watch all the details that I should have watched. But the second time around, I did watch it as if I was supposed to watch it, and I still didn't get out of it what I was supposed to get out of it. But I did see the references, and I understand all that stuff. I even caught references that haven't been talked about. But yeah, I just wasn't. I think I just didn't like this filmmaker's movie.
Well,
But I
and it
think
is
it's
his first film. He comes
Okay.
out of the comics world, and so if I tell you that, and you go back and think about it, and if you hadn't already watched it twice, I'd make you watch it again. The way that he uses the full frame
Mm-hmm.
of the shots looks a lot like what they did in A History of Violence and what they've done in
Yes.
other direct adaptation type movies. Rarely do you have an actual comics artist directing the movie. Frank Miller did a couple of movies, but they weren't any good.
So he's doing frames.
But he's doing
basically.
frames, and he's doing it in a very effective way, but his pacing is a little weird. I don't think that in general this would be considered like anywhere near his best movie, let alone a movie that would normally be talked about on a show like ours, which is to say some people don't think it's good. I like this movie a lot. I think it's fucking gross, and it's like it's shot in such a way that it's just the whole time you're on this edge of like, ugh, I can't endorse or look away from anything that's happening in this weird fucking movie. But the guy, Larraz, he ends up making
cool.
a bunch of movies that are basically the same movie over and over again as he kind of gets it more and more correct. Like his first 3 movies are like the same movie over and over again.
Uh-huh.
But then he makes a movie called Symptoms, starring the daughter of Donald Pleasance, which is regarded as like a minor British classic. Like
Marcy Presence.
Marcy Pleasance.
Marcy Pleasance.
yes, Sex, Candy, and Symptoms. It was a great thing. But no, Symptoms, the movie, is like in the British Film Institute collection, which is, like kind of like their Criterion, but bigger. It's a real deal, excellent film, way more low key, way less gross than the movie you just watched. He also did a movie called Vampires, which I have a feeling we're going to watch sometime next year. That is all the things that this movie got right, and then all the stuff that was wrong corrected, that I think you're actually going to really like.
I think I own that.
It's in the 3-pack I sent you.
Yeah, it's in the box set.
Yes.
That you sent me, right? Yeah.
And it is fucking brutal. I can't wait to watch it. It's awesome. But back to Whirlpool.
Yeah.
Did you notice that there are like prototypical versions of what you're going to see in Friday the 13th as far as character development goes, where you have the Mrs. Voorhees type threatening woman of age and the crazy Ralph character with the flute kind of milling about, and then kind of like not necessarily a son, but definitely a next generation down younger guy killing people.
Mm-hmm.
Like
that's where I get the Norman Bates feel from it.
I would say Norman Bates more than Jason Voorhees.
Oh, 100%. But these are still because remember, the Friday the 13th formula is essentially Psycho on its head, where instead of the killer kid obsessed with mom, it's the killer mom obsessed with kid.
Yep.
But here you get killer kid. I don't want to say banging
fucking mom.
But yeah, banging the older female character. But then he's the one doing the killing instead of her, so it is kind of Psycho, but it's also maybe a bit more.
It's funny. It's funny how like killer mom obsessed with kid works. Killer kid obsessed with mom works. But what you just said, whatever
killer
that
kid
was,
banging mom
killer
doesn't
kid
work.
banging mom and murdering doesn't work.
Right.
It's
how could you know until you make the movie, right? You just roll the dice.
I guess so.
But it's that thing where we're playing with different permutations of the same pieces from Psycho, and that continues on through Friday the 13th. Just as a way to exploit the existing material and try to squeeze more bucks out of an audience.
I mean,
just moving pieces around within the same little universe.
That's a stretch.
But
okay.
The underlying tone of necrophilia in this movie was very, very uncomfortable.
I don't know. Nobody was dead in this movie, right?
Hold on.
There was
the old lady he was banging, pretty close.
She was like 45 or something. She wasn't that old.
But it was like he was so young. It just was weird. And then
it's supposed to be weird.
The wooded
said she was close.
The wooded raping scenes where they almost bring the person to death was kind of weird. Like almost
weird.
like it's almost like grave robber type shit.
Kind of weird.
Like
didn't
crime
he,
scene at banging.
Wait. Refresh my memory. What didn't he like? Stab the one chick.
Yeah, at the end.
Okay.
Then he was like, "What were they like? What did he do? Was he like making out with?"
What was happening in those shots? And it brings up, if you can get past the initial revulsion that you feel toward all these characters, there are some really interesting nuances to what everybody's actually doing in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the woman that gets stabbed is stabbed accidentally, or at least without the knowledge of the photographer. He doesn't know that that's going to happen. It involves, basically, he's setting up these women. Spoiler alert. Here, we'll just get into spoilers.
No. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when
he chases her into
the main
creek.
Chick.
Oh, when she gets killed.
The second chick, when she gets killed, he's like, "I won't kill you if you like do this or that." I don't even remember what he said.
The only thing,
but he ends up stabbing her anyway. But like in the midst of like while they're doing the romantics, it wasn't even romantic. I shouldn't even.
It was
say
very
romantic.
Rob Zombie. That ending is very Rob Zombie.
Yeah, it was come on, and it was but he also ends up killing her and continuing his weird rapey come on.
Yeah, necrophilia.
And then it wasn't necrophilia because she wasn't dead yet,
but
she was dying though.
Right.
It's
Still
real fucked
creepy.
up.
Which is maybe worse.
He chuckles and says it's real fucked up. Yeah, it is.
I'm like, maybe it's worse.
I
don't know.
It's all bad. But it's supposed to be bad. It's that thing where you're showing people horrible things. And I think we get so used to kind of sanitized you know, even the Rob Zombie stuff, you always have this little bit of like, I don't know, you can put yourself into these characters and just be like, yeah, but we can look past these traits and maybe there's something redeemable in these people. No, not in this movie. These people suck.
Because I was also getting a Ghislaine Maxwell Epstein feel from this movie.
Yeah,
I was like,
I can see that.
You know, she's going out, she's gathering people, he's gathering people. Like it was like almost like forced sex slavery, but they're old enough to know better. Like it was just weird on multiple levels.
Yeah, it wasn't forced, but it was very.
No, it was like, oh, I'm gonna fucking
creepy.
kill you. Just kidding. Come here.
Well,
Let me hug
yeah,
you. No,
I
let me
mean-
fucking kill you.
Okay, but those things. So, okay, a couple of things that happen in this movie, and whether these are intentionally done or if this is just he doesn't know what he's doing as a filmmaker yet. The basic premise you find out is that they basically had a trio relationship, a throuple, right? Where the aunt character has her
Triumvirate.
girlfriend, the triumvirate love triangle thing,
Right?
But they also, as part of their thing, the creepy son guy, the creepy nephew, Owen Wilson's lookalike, played by Carl Lanchberry, Theo. The character's name is Theo. Theo, the photographer,
Theo
likes to take pictures of women
in distress.
in distress. And so to create that distress, he has that bargain with the drug dealer guy, John Cena. To basically put the women into peril so he can get good quality, he says, creepy pictures of them in distress.
Yeah.
And so you have this like imagined time before the movie takes place where they are in like this balance of Sarah, the older lady, getting what she wants, Carl, Theo, the younger guy, getting what he wants, being able to be in this little arrangement in the throuple or whatever. But then, because she's killed the first girl, they go about trying to recreate that magic again, maybe this time with less murdering.
How many bodies are in that lake?
Spoiler alert:
2.
There's not less murdering this time.
Well,
Right.
but the thing is, the girl at the beginning of the movie, the Alka-Seltzer girl, you notice that she just leaves, right?
Yes.
She doesn't end up in that lake because Sarah, the older lady, is not a murderer. She just likes to get drunk with women and bang them.
Right.
In the hopes that they can rekindle the magic that they had with the first girl. So she is a problem, right? She is a problematic character, but she's not a murderer. And Theo only kills the last girl because she went into his photo studio and found the evidence that he was involved in the murder of the first girl that they actually had a thing for. So,
and John Cena was there, but you couldn't see him.
They're making a series of terrible decisions and bad choices in this movie, but they're not necessarily like murderers until the very end of the movie when it turns out that they are murderers, or at least the Theo guy's a murderer. So it's interesting. It's more complex than just these people are all bad. Murder. Yeah, this isn't the Texas Chainsaw Family from '73. But it's certainly not people you want to run into.
Instead of the graveyard of cars that you see in Texas, you're basically like, how many times have they done this? This movie, the whole time I'm thinking, how many bodies are in that lake? Like, we're just getting a snippet.
I think only 2.
Yeah, it's just the 2.
Yeah, probably only 2. Yeah.
Because they seem pretty like figured out, like they had a system.
But remember that
how many F-ups?
Well, you say that the old lady was like not like really that terrible.
Oh no, she was bad. She's just not a murderer. She had a lot of other really bad things going on.
But Theo is. How many times did things get messed up? Is my question.
Yeah, fair enough. There's just the way like
I mean that old man just kicked the can over and he was dead. So
that's true.
One of the interesting things, I guess we can't forget the guy that gets killed for trying to find the first girl. But again, they're basically covering for their horrible mistake of letting that one girl get killed by John Cena. And then this movie is what happens in the immediate aftermath. Now, one of the weirder things, if you watch the European cut, which is on, I think, a VHS only, they add my favorite thing from this era, which is the tacked on narration ending. Kind of like what Psycho does, where they explain everything that's happened so that you have closure.
Right. Is
Yep.
it done by John Larroquette?
There's a couple of Italian movies I know where, like, right at the end of the movie, as the credits roll, there's like a little bit of narration totally blunting the ending of what you just saw. And so
Right.
with this movie, the
Okay.
very end is like, they called the police and then weir, and he was taken to jail. Like,
Right.
okay.
More 50s, not so 70s.
Yeah,
That's
very
it.
50s.
Yeah.
One of my favorite endings from a giallo I don't even like that much. So I won't tell you which one. Basically, the priest ends up the killer. And he's killing children. And at the end of the movie, somebody yells from a window, "Hey, it turns out he wasn't even really a priest. He was just pretending."
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, that'll get you past the censor
Aren't they
board,
all?
I guess. But
That'll get you what?
that'll get you past
Past
the
the
censor
censor
board. But, you know, kind of blunts the
Mm.
power of your movie. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, sure does.
But yeah, there's that shot where Tulia, she's like the main girl in this movie, is walking
Yeah,
through the
Tulia.
woods being stalked by Theo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh, it's like a very prototypical lightweight version of what you'll see in Chainsaw and in Friday and in every movie that copies off these movies.
They even do the footstep close up.
Yes,
like the
they do.
feet. Yeah, I saw that. I see you.
And then I'm going to remind you guys,
I can see your feet.
See your feet. That doesn't apply to Jason.
did anybody ever stop and think why in Friday the 13th they play Strip Monopoly?
Yeah.
Doesn't that feel
Yeah.
like a thing when you're a screenwriter? You're like, man, we got to do strip poker, but everybody's seen strip poker. We got to do something different. We'll do strip Monopoly. Well, what even puts that into the back of your mind? I mean,
I want to know why Betsy Palmer wasn't bringing people back to her room. That's my question. I don't want to see that.
just wait for that prequel Friday the 13th show. Maybe we'll get
Oh,
horny
yeah.
Mrs. Voorhees.
I'll tell you what, we in the Bates Motel prequel TV show, we got a really awesome Norma Bates. So
She was pretty good when she was
I'm
played
kinda-
by Olivia Hussey in Psycho 4,
yeah, but Vera did much better.
but she's no Olivia Hussey.
But I got 4 seasons of her.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That's true.
But yeah, so going forward, we will hopefully get to watch Vampires sometime next year. And you're going to be like, wait a minute, this is just an isolated country house in England. It's like, isn't this the same movie as Whirlpool? But then you'll see, oh no, this is the trading place. Whirlpool is the trading places of vampires coming to America. And you'll see how that all falls into place next year.
Interesting.
It's the Jurassic Park to the Westworld. It's the
Yes.
the next step.
It's
to
interesting how that
filmmaking.
happens.
Well, you learn things
Yeah.
over years, and then you get a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get
Something
high
looks
budget.
great on the page, and then you do it, and everybody's like, ugh. You're like, oh, but that part worked.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then the other part didn't. Okay, we'll fix
And then
it.
you get to refine it, release it again as something that's completely different, but not really. And maybe the second time or third time around, like it's a hit.
Yeah.
Yep.
And-
we figured it
Or
out.
the bigger budget makes it better, which makes it more mainstream, which
Maybe.
makes people recognize it
Maybe.
as one of your great films. When then they go back and watch your older films, they're like, "Oh my God, you were a genius all along."
So yeah, I don't
That's
know
true.
for sure that the guys who made these movies later saw this movie, or if it's just something else in the zeitgeist that brought it all together. But this is the earliest example I've seen of a movie that really looks like 73, 74, 78, right? I'd never seen anything that looked like I Spit on Your Grave or Last House on the Left earlier than Last House on the Left. Like
what was
I really,
the other Craven that was
The Hills
that
Have
uncomfortable?
Eyes.
What's it? Hills Have Eyes. That's right.
all those movies come out after this movie. And whether he's seen any of these at this point, who knows? But they told us that they'd never seen A Bay of Blood. And
Right.
yet Last House on the Left played next to Last House on the Left Part 2, which was just a fake name for A Bay of Blood. So you can't believe anything they tell you.
No,
So
they didn't see it in school. They saw it years later.
they didn't see it in film school. They saw it years later after they'd already
Right.
made Halloween. And maybe, maybe.
Maybe.
But this one does have strip poker in the most menacing way I've ever seen it presented. Like, that's the thing. Here's the thing. Have you ever seen strip poker in a movie that wasn't like fun, drunken bacchanalia silliness?
Mm-mm.
That's true.
I never thought of a way to make that like horrifying. But
Yeah,
I'm
it's usually,
uncomfortable
like,
for that.
teenagers doing something they're not supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and this
Yeah.
is just
It's
like
usually like
It's
exhilarating.
not Mrs.
It's like,
Havisham
there's
trying to.
there's like adrenaline happening, and it's like this
Sorry.
is exciting and fun and crazy.
You didn't think you were going to get a great expectations
no,
reference, did
that was a good poll.
you? Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the kind of thing. That's where I think Larraz is doing.
How cool.
Al Ghul.
Yeah, Larraz Al Ghul is doing great work, even if it's not pleasant, right? Like,
Oh, shit.
it reminds me kind of do you remember in the Batman movie where Vicky Vale had recently come back from Corto Maltese?
Yes. I was just thinking about that portfolio when you were talking about this.
This movie is her
That's it?
portfolio, where it's like,
Yes.
most people are going to look at it and find it unpleasant. But man, if we could
Mhm.
find the Joker, he'd be all about this movie.
All the bodies.
He'd be-
You give them such.
He'd be baiting and switching the whole time through this movie because it's so fucking gross.
See.
But when was the last time you watched a movie? Here's a question. When was the last time you watched a movie that was so committed to being gross on purpose, besides Showgirls?
The Fly.
So is this the sexy Fly? Fly had a lot of sex.
I
in it.
thought The Fly was kind of sexy.
I think The Fly was sexier.
Well, that's the thing. This isn't
yes.
sexy, but it's gross
No.
in the sexy column, right? Like if they had to pick which column to put the grossness, there's not a lot of gore in this. There's a little bit of blood.
Yeah, this
No.
is gross sex.
Yeah.
Whereas The Fly was
Gross science
Sex.
with sex.
Yeah.
yes.
I equate it to, and I know Walmart's never going to be a sponsor. I equate it to going to Walmart, watching this movie. Like I needed
Yeah.
a shower after I watched it.
Well, and it's effective,
Yeah.
right? It makes you want.
Not a good shower, whereas it's just-
Yeah, that's a different shower. That's the Emmanuel shower.
the
That's
Emmanuel
different.
shower, yes, where it's a little more subtle.
Yeah,
and
well, I don't
supple.
know if subtlety was Emmanuel's.
That's true.
But
At least it was sexier.
now, do you guys remember when we talked about Psycho? Here's another movie we'll have to watch soon, I think. And it will bring you back to Whirlpool. I think it'll actually put Whirlpool into a better light a little bit. There's a movie called Peeping Tom from England. Came out the same year as Psycho. Now, of course, Hitchcock is English, but he's releasing movies in the U.S. by 1960. But Peeping Tom...
Is this where you tell me Hitchcock stole everything from an old English movie
No,
to
no,
make
no, no,
Psycho? I'm going to cry.
No, but... No,
'Cause
Hitchcock...
Norman was a peeping Tom.
Everybody else stole stuff from Hitchcock, and then from each other from what they'd already stolen from Hitchcock. I can't find any evidence to the contrary. But the thing is, 1960, you get the movie Psycho. You get the movie Virgin Spring, which goes on to be Last House on the Left later. Almost note for note, just in a modern setting instead of the medieval years. You also get Peeping Tom, which is all about voyeurism and, in that case, moving photography. It's video photography. So you've got these elements that I think Whirlpool integrates that Peeping Tom element a little bit more than even the Friday the 13th to the Last Houses, because you have this sense of like, she's watching them, he's watching them, you know, he's taking pictures of them in the midst of a tryst. He's taking pictures of the distress in the woods, right? Like he is the Peeping Tom character from the original movie, but just it's 1970s now, so things are way worse.
Right.
So we'll need to look into that more going forward. Also, going way back to season 1, we talked about how there was an attack in the movie, I believe, Frenzy from Hitchcock, where he's now an old man trying to shoot movies that look like basically this movie and Last House.
Right.
The early 70s, young, edgy, horrifying filmmakers, Texas Chainsaw, these movies. And Frenzy fails in a lot of ways because he uses his 1940s and 50s vocabulary visually to try to present basically a sexual assault. But not being young and unwilling to shoot as grimy as you'd need to make that a compelling, horrifying thing like this movie. And instead it comes off clumsy and weird and not very lovely. That's a reference to the scene if you've seen Frenzy. Anyway.
Right.
Whirlpool may not have been your favorite movie yet, guys. But as we talk about these other movies going forward, I'm going to circle back over and over just as I have with the Friday movies. And I think you're going to see that there's a lot in this movie and in the time that this movie comes out that, like, I don't know if it's a good change, but I think it's definitely a sign that things are changing.
Yes.
And headed in a new horrifying direction.
I think we actually had our first episode where, even though George and I didn't like it, it was a teachable moment. And I'm not saying I like it now, but I kind of feel why we watched it. And thank you for showing me something I probably would have never watched and probably will never watch again, but at least I understand.
I also understand, and also
this is like
and also
confession.
No thank you.
No thank you, but he understands.
I understand.
It's like watching, like, basically you made us watch Sharknado so that we could watch Jaws.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's sharks in it. But, did we really have to watch Sharknado?
We started with
sharks?
Shaving Ryan's Privates, and next
Right.
we'll watch Saving Private Ryan.
Nice. I'm all for that.
One cool thing with the European version of this, all the black and white flashbacks were sepia toned, so it just looked like Texas Chainsaw. That was weird.
Yes. But we didn't get that cool...
Oh, man. Without that sound, why
scenes.
even bother?
Yeah, true.
I will say, though, this movie, the first time I watched it, I was just like, I got to see everything this guy made, because this guy's fucking crazy. Like, there's something about his willingness to not... Because it's not a commercial movie at all. You can tell for sure.
No.
He did not make this movie thinking, I'm going to make a lot of money. He made this movie for reasons, which I still am not completely clear on.
I think he made this movie knowing that there was a secondary market for softcore thrillers.
Well, the crazy thing is that market doesn't really exist yet. I mean, there's little bits of like Joseph Sarno and other guys like that making movies that are sexy and making some money. But you're not talking about like the late 80s, early 90s thing. Hell, Deep Throat doesn't come out for another 2 years. So you're pre-porno chic too.
Because you remember, like, the 80s were full of movies like this on Cinemax. Basically just stupid murder mystery, giallo type movies where it just had sex in it. And we talked about it many times.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Those kind of movies that people they didn't even want to watch it. They just had to watch it. It was like when you drive down the highway and there's a train hits a car. You want to drive slow just to see if there's any bodies. And you want to see if you can see anything that's remotely disgusting, just so you can tell your friends, dude, I saw a head.
You can certainly see a lot of bodies in this movie.
Yes. Bodies I might not have wanted to see, but hey, it was fun.
So what are we watching next week?
Next week
is a movie just like this.
Oh man, it's essentially the sequel to this, but it's transitioning us toward the Christmas season.
Word. We are watching a classic giallo. No, we're not a giallo. A movie called Coming to America.
Get out of town.
We're watching Coming to America, and we're not watching the sequel with the 2 in it. We're watching
Okay.
the T.O. version.
Coming
not
Terrell Owens America.
Get your popcorn ready. Ah, shit. Yes. What do you know about Coming to America?
Oh, I know of it.
You know of it?
I know it's Eddie Murphy.
Okay.
That's just about it.
Okay. Cool.
I know it's supposed to be hilarious.
I heard it was a drama, so we'll see.
I suppose we will.
Can't wait.
Nice.
All right,
Party
very good.
time. Excellent. Don't they do that? No, I guess not.
And thank you for joining us on the Remedial Film Class Podcast. As always, you can find us at facebook.com/remedialfilmpod. We'll be back next week. The 1980s classic, not the new one, Coming to America.